Yeah.
I'm working on building a library
So,
website,
then
and
you
we
cut
used
over.
RS
Every once in a while
forms
you
to
might
do a
go.
suggestion form, and
Show people who it is.
Very
it
good.
was it was clear. You know, when you're looking for something, I felt that it was clear where to find what you needed.
This is recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, just open some assets here. I
Yeah,
know
you could get
it
fancy,
takes a while for this machine to start because
especially
it's
if
got
they're
a lot
asking
on it.
questions.
Right. Unfortunately, the mic is actually working pretty well.
Okay, so while waiting for this computer to fully boot, RS Forms Pro is the version that's supported on Joomla 2.5. They had a product for 1.5 called RS Form that was free, non-commercial, that you could download, and I believe you still can get that, but they have stopped really supporting it in any big way. And
Make sure the sound is coming.
so the product is now is called RS Form Pro. There's a single component that will install on both Joomla 1.5 or 2.5. So that's nice. They have different. It's not free. It's made by RS Joomla, and I believe the least expensive support subscription is about 19 euros, which is about less than $30. So, and that gives you the right to download the component, use it on sites, use their forums, and then when your subscription runs out, you just don't get the updates, but you continue to use the product, of course. So it's like lots of commercial Joomla products. The form I want to use for this case study is one that actually came to me very recently. It's for an intranet where a company has employees that travel overseas, and when they travel overseas, the human resources person who's responsible for the phones, the cell phones, has to notify T-Mobile to turn on the international calling plan. And if you've gone overseas, you know the rates can be dollars per minute if you don't have any special plans. So basically, this is a form that the employees would fill out, and they fill out basically who they are, what their cell phone number is, although that could be in a database, but we're going to have them put in their cell phone and put in a list of countries. For this purposes of this demo, they're going to put in up to 3 countries that they might be traveling to, and what the dates are. So that's what I decided to do, because it's the most recent form that I had to do. I thought it was more interesting than just another name, address, zip code, state. So let me refresh this. Sorry for the delay. Okay, so what I have here is a vehicle to just show this demonstrators. I have a brand new, pretty new installation of Joomla. And all that's on it is a JCE editor and RS Forms Pro. So if we, and the form that I'm talking about, showing you how to build up what all the components are, is this international cell phone usage request form. So basically, I want to just go over some of the features. Basically, you just put in your, I'll put it in. Put in the name. And you put in some email address. And cell phone number. If you don't fill the fields out, you can see in this form that some of the fields are required, or wherever there's an asterisk, those are required fields. And we can show you how we do all the testing to make sure that the minimal requirements are made. You don't put that in, you're just going to try to submit the form, you're immediately going to get an error message saying that either this is not a phone number, or the required fields are not filled in. I'll put in something here. And then you would put in a country, like, see, I'm going to Algeria on October 1st. And I'm leaving Algeria and I'm going to, like, Morocco. And I'll get there on...
So all these calendar things that are popping up are as forms, right?
Right, I'm going to show you how, basically how to build this form, but I'm just going to give you like the ending. Let's just say, really, pick a country. Going to Afghanistan, of course. And you times the date you're getting back in the U.S. Obviously, most trips will just be to one country and back. You just have a single country, the date you're getting there, and your return. And when you update this, this is going to be one of the more interesting parts of it, is that how did I populate this with some taking the fields out. Just want to show you the JavaScript and where it would get plugged in so that you could form kind of an English text version of summarizing. And I do this a lot. I find that the emails, I want to show you, this is going to generate 3 emails. One is going to go to the person who submitted the form, so they have a record of what they submitted. One is going to go to the cell phone administrator within the company in HR, and another one's going to go to T-Mobile. And there's going to be different requirements for those different forms, slightly. But my client requested that it be somewhat presented somewhat like this within the form, so I build it right here. Now, sometimes I build, if it were not necessary for the user who creates the form to have this formatting, I'll sometimes make this a hidden field. But you'll see that because we have the benefit of JavaScript to build things like this, take the information here. For example, you're putting in the date you arrived in, so now Algeria is this date, then they enter the date that you're getting to Morocco. So logically, these are the same dates, but they wanted it in this format. So this is we just want to show you where you plug the JavaScript in here to get this same format. Sometimes it can be tricky. Or, for example, let's say they when I did this form, and this is just going live, this is a very recent thing I did, I would add 2 days to the return date, because if you've flown around the world, you know you get delayed, and let's say it's Friday, and the plane gets delayed, and your calling plan is gone on a Friday. Your office is closed, there's nobody to call to say extend my calling plan, and on Saturday and Sunday, that's when you're going to make the most calls to say, I'm going to be late, make sure, etc. So that would be another good use of JavaScript, would be that when you confirm the dates to the person who filled the form out, you confirm the dates maybe to HR, but T-Mobile is given, let's say, a 3-day weekend extension. You always add 3 days because you're better off having the plan for 3 more days than in the worst case. Then, then that would be another use of JavaScript. So anyway, to show you how I would build this form. So in the back end of, here's the front end view. Here's the back end. This is what ours, it installs very simply. It's a single component. And this is what the interface looks like. So you can manage forms. The information that is submitted when a form goes is put into an interface that you can see. So for example, I'll show you some finishes. So you would look at, this is information that was submitted as when I tested this. And you can see it from the back end, so that's a nice thing that it keeps information. You can look at any particular record and select edit. And where's my edit button? Used to a really bigger screen than my laptop, got knocked down to a low res in order to be compatible with the projector. But so you can see any individual entry in here, and that's also useful. If it turned out that you expect confirmation, the HR person expected confirmation from T-Mobile that they got the record, they could make an extra hidden field, and you could go back in here and make a note and check that field off, and this could be its database to make sure nothing gets missed, for example. Okay. So, anyway, I'm going to close that. So if I were making a new form, let me just go through the process here. And I'll probably skip this. I know we have only a certain amount of time. But this normally comes with two default demonstration forms, sample forms. I erased those for some reasons of copying forms back and forth. I've just left this one for me. So to make a new form, you click New in the upper right, and there is a little wizard, but I'll just skip the wizard. I just want to show you the pieces that go up here. The types of fields that you can put up there are on the left. So I can see time-wise I would never get to build everything on the form, but I'll just jump through some quick examples. So free text is just the text that goes at the top. So if you were putting in instructions, and I'll just abbreviate, fill out this form. Travel. So we can apply national form. We put some text up here. So even if, actually the text, text would go in the body, and every field that you fill out has some tag so you can refer to. So I'll call this instructions, and I'll save it. This is just free text. So in order to see this form, actually in the front end, we have to have a reference to it somewhere. So I'm going to just save and close this quickly and make a front-end reference so that we can check up on it as we proceed. So I would go out to the, let's say, menu, and I'll add an entry to the main menu. Create one. And when you select the type, you'll see that RS Forms added 2 additional types of items that you can point menus to. One is to view the submissions, which would be looking at your back-end information that was submitted for the forms, and one is for the form itself. So I'll select a form type. I'll get a choice of forms here. I just started building it, so actually I didn't even give it a title, so it's currently called no title. And I'll just call this Joomla Day form. And we'll just put that on the menu so we can see it. So from the front end of this site now, there's the front end. If I refresh this page, I have a link now to the Joomla Day form. And so far all I've got is the instructions. Okay, is that pretty clear? So now we'll add some more interesting things to the form. So in the back end, now that I have a way to view it, I'll go back to the RS forms. Click on the one called the title. Let's give it a title. The title is in the properties area, and here's the RS. Here would be where I would give it a title. So I would call it. Title. And I'll save that. So now I'm going to add some more interesting parts of the form. I think, I'll do that. So go back to the components, and I'm just looking at the time frame. So I think the time frame, instead of building this form, I'm going to go over the form to show you the important aspects of it, because I can see an hour wouldn't be enough. So let's actually just look at the other form, the more interesting parts of the form. So the next field would be, let's say, the first country. Okay, actually, I guess it is. We'll try to go to. Well, let's go to the first country. So. So the country is going to be a drop down. So I'm going to pick a drop down, and I'll call it country 1. And the user will see it also as country 1. Space in there. And I can import a big list, but I'll just put, let's say, Canada, Mexico, Spain. It's very easy to go out and find a list of 250 countries in the select box. If you just Google on select box, it'll come right up and you can pick somebody else's list. And I'm going to save that. And if I refresh my form in the front, I got a select box. Now, you can change the select boxes so that you can make more than one choice on them. That's an option for the select box. And then that would be the country. I think I'm making a mistake here and by trying to build this. So let's just go over the form and change my plan. Let's look at the details of this one. So the first thing we had was just the name field. This is an intranet. So one of the interesting things you can do, because it's an intranet, is when the person logs, they have to be logged in to reach the form. So the fact that they're logged in, we know at least 3 things about them. We know their login name, like maybe S. Newfeld, their full name, Stewart Newfeld, and their email. So how would we get the form to input that information? That's an interesting thing. So what we can do is each field, or most of the fields of the form, like this full name, if we go to edit it, edit icons. I'm trying to figure it out.
So when you click on the name, it's not going to edit mode?
Edit this.
Edit, there's the edit column, the fourth column. Left delete, there you go.
Oh, sorry, I want the other one. I really want-
You want the top one, right?
Yes, I want the top one. I want the older one. Okay, I want to edit simply this full name.
The main components
Yeah,
instead of
scroll down the
property.
bottom and take your scroll bar to the right. That scroll bar there. There they are.
There.
I'm lost on the small screen.
Same thing happened to me.
Okay, so the buttons then are here. Okay, so this is the code right here. Let me bring that up.
You can actually put JavaScript code in the default value.
Yeah, that's, well, actually, that's not JavaScript, that's PHP. I'm going to get that in a second here. Okay, so basically, this is the drapes for Joomla, and okay, so this is pretty interesting code. The interesting part about RS forms is where you can add cascading style sheet information, where you can add JavaScript, and where you can add PHP. And so in the definitions of your form fields, there's an opportunity to put in the default value. So sometimes the default value is just instructions, or but you can put PHP in the default value. So they want you to include it in comments for code. And basically, this is PHP that's leveraging the Joomla. So the Joomla, you set this variable equal to this Joomla object, which gets a user object essentially. So as soon as you fit, and the nice thing about RS Joomla is it's not hard to find these little code snippets that do very useful things. So I was able to find this on their website. This gets the user object, and then once you have the user object, you can get any of the attributes that you want to. So this one fetches the email address of the user. If you put a name, you get the name. If you put username, so that'll be the full name that's in there. So then it just returns it to the form. So this will end up with the email address, pre-populating the email. so the person doesn't have to put that in there. Yes?
And you said you got the code from the RS Form website?
Yeah, there are probably 60 little snippets in your frequently asked questions. It's very well organized, and this is there. Very useful things are there. Some of the things that I found the most useful so far in the forms I've done for pre-populating forms, sometimes in a field that's visible, but sometimes in a field that's just hidden, but then I want that information to go onto my form. This was the first time I actually did this, got user credentials, but it's often useful to serial number forms so that at every time someone submits the form, you increment the number, let's say by 1, so that it gives you a nice reference into your list of forms. So they have some code. One way to do that is count the number of records that already have been submitted and add 1 to it. And so there's some simple PHP for that I've used that's been useful for populating the form. Another thing is the date. It's very simple to just get the date from Joomla and put the date somewhere on the form. Maybe the user sees that, or maybe not. Because you don't want to depend upon the email header, in the message necessarily being your only record of the time of the date that was submitted. So, getting back to the Joomla screen, this is going into the default value, of that. The other thing is this is where you set whether it's a required field, and it is. This is where you might validate it. In the case of an email, you could require that it is an email address. So there are different. These are all the different types of validation. You can check that something is an email address or that it's a USA zip code. It is possible, I've never done it, but it is possible, they tell you how to do it, to build your own validation to add to this list. So, like if you're in Canada and you want to validate the Canadian zip codes, you could probably, if you can't find one on a form, you could write some code for that. So, being able to put the hook into there to execute PHP at this point, that's one of the more interesting things about the form. Getting back to the, well, I'm going to just cancel that because I didn't change anything. Let me look at some more hooks. That's the more interesting part of this. So the form has a drop down for countries, and then it has a pop-up for the dates. And let me go into editing that. The name changes. There are a couple of things that are interesting on the date field. To use them. Here's the arrival date, so let me just edit that. So I call this country 1 arrival date. I made it required. And in the attributes, it's worth noting that I don't know actually where RS Joomla is, but their default is the European date style, so they typically show the date first instead of the month. Their default is DDMM/MN. So you just reverse that, and that'll straighten out your date to get the format that you want. The other thing that is that you can have the dates be a pop-up, or you can have them be in line. When you're in line, they take up about 1 inch on your form. But so mine are collapsible. But if I change this from a pop-up to being flat, which is the word they're using for a non.
Can I ask a question before you do that? On the validations, what type of validations are you doing on that, or can you do there?
Whether it's numeric, whether it's a valid.
More syntactical versus going to a database or anything, right?
Right, it's not comparing about a database. It's, well, I don't know if you can.
Put a code snippet in to say, check this in the database.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do that. That's a good question. Can you, or for that matter, build your select list from a database? I don't know if there's a way to build your select lists based on a query. I don't think so. I don't think in the future. So here's the same form. If I go to this field, I'll just take this one because it's easy to reach. Take this pop-up and I change it to being flat, and I will update it. Then by default, it's not a pop-up. That's what they mean by flat, that's all I'm saying. So it's nice having a date picker. Let's see what else we have on the form. So the other interesting thing about the fields is many times when you change a field, you want your form to recalculate. So you want to put triggers, JavaScript triggers on like an on-click or an on-change. So the way you would do that, so the way I do this form is when you change the country, the information in this bottom field is going to automatically update. So if I pick Albania, then at the bottom, the country Albania just changed, gets updated in there. And if I change it from Albania to Algeria, it changed to Algeria. So a lot of times you want your form to either calculate if they're purchasing something and you have multiple amounts and you want the amounts done, you want to run some script. So first of all, what is getting, let me do two things. Let me show you some of the JavaScript code and where you put that is actually calculating this field at the bottom, building that, and where the triggers are. So in the back end, on the properties of the form, one of the things in the design is where you can put CSS and where you can put JavaScript. So I have some JavaScript here. I built a function called recalculate. And what it really does here is it uses the DOM. I don't know, how many people have coded JavaScript? JavaScript coders? We have a couple of coders. So it's not my favorite language to work in. I find it have to very gently build and test very few new statements at a time because it doesn't really give you a lot of debugging information. Your script can just kind of stop working more than other languages, I find, so you have to really be careful with it. But that's why having a bunch of good examples actually can save you a lot of time. But basically, you fetch these, for the non-JavaScript programs, you fetch elements using the document object model and by their names. And I want to show you a couple of idiosyncrasies about RS forms where this can be tricky because the names sometimes change when you back up and restore your form. So I had some issues and it took me a while to figure that out. So you want to, and JavaScript is a case-sensitive language. So if you use capital C's, you got to use capital C's when you make your parts. But basically, it assigns hooks to each of these items, and then...
I'm sorry, but I'm a little lost on this page. Are we talking about per field, putting in values with JavaScript checks and validations?
Okay.
Or are we talking about the form itself?
Good question. So what I'm doing here is this is one JavaScript. This is the JavaScript for the page.
So it's supposed to kind of submit to check everything to tell you, oh, you have the wrong value in this field.
Let me show you what it's a combination. This is my script that I wrote, and basically this script goes to the whole page. It looks at the whole page each time it runs. I'll tell you what runs and how we trigger it running. This script runs and looks at all these objects on the page, and well, once it becomes part of I mean, this is the function that runs. It does all the calculations. It takes country 1, echoes it down. It takes date 1, echoes it down. But when does it run? The JavaScript on a page is triggered by events that you assign to elements of the page. And let me show you where that is. That's the other part of the equation. So this is the script that runs and does the calculation, but where you get to assign the script is on the individual fields, like country 1, I have to edit, or I'll show you country 3 because it's easier to scroll to. On this field called country 3, in the additional attributes, you have 3 tabs at the top, okay? And one of them is attributes, and this is where you put the JavaScript on the elements of your page. So the way JavaScript works on a page is you can assign these events so that your browser is always looking to see, in this case, when you change something in that particular field. When you change country 1, it triggers an event, and this function essentially calls my recalculate, which is that one script for the page. So I add this event to everything that, anytime I want the page to change, I have to assign an event, an on change, an on click, or something. So that's the way JavaScript works.
So if you wanted to, for instance, you got 10 fields, field number 5, they make a change and it's inaccurate. At that point, as soon as they type it in, it could come back and say, hey, invalid choice.
Right.
It doesn't have to go all the way down to the submit and check the entire form to come
Right.
back. And
So there's one built-in set of validation, which is JavaScript, that comes automatically with the field type validation that they let you put in. So for example, and that runs only when the form is submitted. That's when they check the validation. But if you want to add validation or any other function more immediately, you could have this call your own validating function. So yeah, their validation runs only when the form is submitted. That's when they check that if you've asked to check that an item is required. Well, obviously it's required. You don't bother to check it till the form is submitted. So if a field is required and they need to put a cell phone number in there, that gets checked by the JavaScript they help you build for the form.
okay, so here you called it recalculate. So that big JavaScript page that you showed us before is called recalculate.
I named the function recalculate.
Recalculate.
I could have more than one function.
Also create a separate one called country, and check country, and then for that one thing, for this one field, you could put in check country.
Yes.
And then you can still have recalculate for everything else, but if you wanted to make sure they always got that right, you would put that in there.
Right.
Okay.
And you could update, you could have more than one function, you could have separate functions, for different, as many as you want, triggered on within the form. Yeah. So I can show you another form later, for example, that when you it's always adding up how much you owe for a benefit, because you want 2 tickets at this price, and you click that. As soon as you add another thing, it wants to recalculate and show you the running total.
Now, are there any wizards involved in this to create JavaScript, or you usually have to
No.
write it, cut code?
The validation that they have, the choices they give you, though, that in a sense is like a wizard. That if you ask it to be a check that it's an email field, it'll check that. But this you have to write. But since JavaScript for forms is there are some very good videos on like lynda.com, and there are a lot of books on doing this, but it's still it can take a while. The JavaScript can be a little tricky. And actually, one of the words of wisdom I would give you is that when you get jobs to do forms for companies, it can be really tricky sometimes. The JavaScript can take a lot of time to write and debug, and so you should be clear on what your client's expectations are and how pretty the emails that end up coming out of this are going to look. Or for that matter, even the form. You can see that as you add items to the RS forms, they're in a column. And there are a couple of different styles. You can do a 2-column layout. There are a couple of styles and themes that are built in. I could, in the properties here, there are some form layouts so that there are a couple of built-in styles where, in this case, the labels are to the left of the fields you're filling up. In this case, the labels are right above the field. So that's a difference in the style. And then there's 2-column versions, the same thing, where in one case, the labels are above your information and to the left. But sometimes people ask you to do a form, and their artist has done their postcard without any restrictions, explaining, here's our benefit, and here's where the information is about how many tickets, and here's the information if you want to pay for a quarter page in their brochure. And the artist that created the postcard for something to be filled out manually has no such restrictions. And they can mix colors on the left and the right. And so you want to be careful when, if someone hasn't had the forms created on a website before, that you manage their expectations so they don't think you're going to have exactly that colored postcard show up on the form. Anything can be done, but not on the budget they may have. So, I do warn you from hindsight that that's an important thing.
Where do you have the ability to change font or change size of the font or change color?
Okay, let me show you some of the simple ones and some of the color ones. So in this form that I did, if you just enter in text, it will be on it in this freestyle text area. You'll just get the default font that is inherited depending on, and actually this will change some of the inheritance on what fonts are used here come from your templates.
Okay.
Yeah, not just this product, but they're inheriting your Joomla template. So if you change your Joomla template, things are going to change a bit. But in order to put this on a colored background, for example, and not just be text wrapping with the width of the page, and even the amount of space you have for your form will depend upon whether you have, let's say, a left column navigation on that page or no left column navigation. So this information you would change here. When you, let's see, let me take back the component. Let's just cancel out this, and let's take that first text area. When you put the text into the text area, this product lets you put styles in. So you have a choice. I can put inline styles in here, so that, let's say, and I'll do that here. I can either just say style. If it's a one-up and you don't want to make a separate style sheet, you could just say style equal background color say blue. That should work. So you can put an inline style So there's the opening div, here's the closed div. And if I update this, I just got rid of the style I was using, so it's going to be full width, but it will have a background color. So I'm going to update that. So this is the phone request. And if I go back to the front, whoop, kind of dark blue, you can't see it, but that. So one option is, if it's only one block and you don't want the style information to repeat everywhere else, you can do an inline style right like that. What I decided is, oh, it'd be easier since I have 3 blocks of text. Another place that you can put the style sheet is here. I built a style information in the properties. Here's the style I use. You can build a style sheet, and this gets attached to your forms. And I put that information here. So that's where I created a class. This is information for a class called phone text. So on the div, instead of putting the information in an inline style, I created a class. This is a style sheet that gets attached to your form. And I created for a class phone text. I'm making the width of that div is going to get applied to a div. 420 pixels. The background color is going to be that color I had, and I put a little padding around the text. So I did that there. So this is a way to put a style in there, and all I have to do is go into the component, which I had edited there. If I take that styling out, and I put back that the class is phone text, then it pays attention to it looks for that CSS, which is on your form. So now on the form, so if I do that, it goes back to the way it was. And if you look at the source code, remember, you can always look at the source code for any of these pages. You'll see that in addition, you've got all your style sheet CSS. This has been brought in the header, but at some point when and this is the JavaScript that I wrote to process the form that comes into here, and after the JavaScript, this is that little snippet of CSS that I wrote that's part of your page. So yeah, there's things coming in from different places. Okay, so let me just continue. So that's kind of interesting. Where you put your triggers on the individual items, see what else is here that's kind of interesting. One of the things I found that was difficult to do was these the enumerations on most of the form fields that you put on here. You get to figure out the IDs that they get to be known as. So if you write that this is full name for this text field, it shows up as full name in the ID for that form element, and you can write your JavaScript for that. But I found that with these text items, the assignments that were given to the pop-ups, the calendar pop-ups, were done based upon some collective assignment for all the forms that you have created. So, it has a database, I guess, for its various calendars somehow created. And I had to look at the source of the for the page, and enumerates them. See, I'm referring to them in my JavaScript as txt calendar 1_0. If you have 3 calendars on the page, it calls them like 1, 2, and 3, underscore 1, 2, and 3. And depending upon how many forms you have, I guess it has a database that's collective to all the forms, it comes up with a number here. So I just warned you, it was a little cryptic because I backed up the form from one website to another, which is a very nice feature of RS Forms. It lets you back up one or more forms and then restore them to another site. So you can put them on your staging site, get your JavaScript and everything working, and then promote it to another site. But I found that when it restored it, it renumbered these and broke my JavaScript. So just something to look out for. It only seems to do that on that calendar field, which is a little tricky because of that JavaScript that they have in the calendar. But so that's, you know, the ultimate source of what is happening, of you to know for sure the cause and effect between what you're putting in on your form attributes, is to periodically look at that source information. I want to move on from here to the emails that get triggered, because that's a big part of the flow. So the email for this, actually before even the email, when you submit the form, you usually want to give your client some feedback, thanking them for submitting the form, or if it's an order for something, you know, we'll ship your item within 3 days, or something to close, you know, so that they know the form was submitted, they have some sense that it's submitted, and plus you want to manage their expectations appropriately for having submitted the form. Also, after they submit the form, you most of the time want to give them a continue button to go somewhere else, the next page. Now that page might be back to the form, or when they're done, it may be more appropriate to take them anywhere else on the website. So the way you set up both of those things is in the properties for the form information. It asks you, do you want to show a thank you message? So I said yes. So then, of course, you get to create that thank you message. And it gives you a pop-up for you to edit your thank you message. So, and this inherits whatever Joomla edit you have installed. So if I have JCE, you're going to get JCE. So this says, this will be, after this form is submitted, the next thing that's going to come up for them is going to be, thank you for your request. You entered that you will be, and then that's the information that is in the, this is the reference to the field. I call that little text field that I'm building that says traveling to Albania, this date to that date, and that goes right in here. So it's crafted so that it becomes a sentence. You will, you have entered that you will be, and that starts with traveling to. So
what did you name that trip summary?
okay, so the trip summary, that reference is on that field. That when I created this text area, this is a text area, and I called it trip summary. So in my, that's here. A lot of bookkeeping. What this is. So here it is, right there. Okay. So I called it trip summary here. So it's best to give these, to only use alphanumeric characters and underscores, and you don't want any spaces in here because your JavaScript won't reference it later if you want to attach references to it. But the system, when you build your emails or your confirmation, you know, when you're editing what your confirmation screen or your thank you screen should be, that was here. If you click this little toggle on the right column here, this is a quick summary of all the fields that you created. And you can refer to the value that the person types in the field is referred to as its designation, colon the value. The prompt that they got, or for the label next to the field, can also be pulled up as the caption. So you can either refer to the caption. So these squirrely braces surrounding your designation is how you can refer to those variables when you build your screens and when you build your emails. Let's show you the email, for example. You don't have to send out any emails, but you could just merely have the information and then the thank you screen. But I think everything I've done so far with this, well, I guess I have a few where I haven't used email, but almost all of them have an email. So this one is the user email, and for you to know where it's getting emailed back to, in your form, you would have had a field called something similar to your email. So this is the header, and then this lets you edit the body for the email that's going to be triggered with your form. So we're going to send in this case, this email that goes to the user who fills the form out is going to come to them from cell phone account administrator. Their actual email address will be phoneadmin@joomlastudies.com I used. And this goes to them. So this gets sent out to them. This is the top, the subject, International Cell Phone Usage Request. It does let you attach files to it. I haven't done anything like that, but if you wanted someone to register to get, let's say I put up this form, I cannot give you RS forms for free, but I can back up this form. If anybody's interested and would like to have a clean copy of this form to think about to help them, if you give me your email or your business card, I'll email you that. But let's say I wanted to make that downloadable. I want the form as part of a tutorial downloadable. You just give me your email, and then I'm going to attach this to the confirmation. I could do that. I could have this thing all wrapped up as a little form, and I could send it to you. So you can make attachments. That's kind of nice. You can do a text or an HTML. I usually do an HTML formatted field. So that's where you put your variables in for who they go to, the email get triggered to. And then the actual email is here. So the content of the email is confirmation, and that's my wording, to, so whoever filled out the form, that'll be their name, this will be their email. Your international cell phone usage request for cell phone number, I take the cell phone which is on the form, has been received. You have indicated you are, and then it just summarizes their trip. So you say, oh, wait a minute, I'm changing my day. Because you don't know, their travel plans could change from the time you fill the form out, and this way it's in their email, so that you want to give them a copy. So that's their copy. Then, very often, most commonly, if somebody were donating money or subscribing to your mailing list, you'd send them, this is a confirmation that they subscribe to your mailing list, or a confirmation that they signed up for tickets, or you mail them their invoice, and formatting an invoice can be a little complicated with the dollar signs and the taxes and everything lining up, but you can do that. Here's an example for the
Can I ask you one question before you jump on it? I don't mean to get off track.
Yeah.
But in there, I see PHP scripts. Can you, if you want to check against a PHP script, use the same variables of cell phone number, caption, or cell phone number, value?
Yes, you can pull up. I'll give you an example of the PHP scripts.
So if you want to check it against the database, for instance, you just use that value? With its squiggly brackets?
Yes. I'll pull up, maybe I can pull that form up here. Where I've used PHP is they give you two scripts, one that runs before the form hits the server. And like an example of where I use PHP is, we were talking about it too, I've taken, I've done fundraiser forms where it takes the money and sends it to authorize.net. So authorize.net wants their information in a very specific way. You read the documentation for AuthorizeNet. AuthorizeNet is the biggest credit card gateway in the United States. I think Visa owns them. They have like half the market by volume. And so they have very specific definitions of what information they want to clear the credit card. Now, they get a summary line, for example, and you can't send them all the information in your invoice. So, for example, if somebody wants 2 tickets to the benefit, they want a quarter page in your brochure, and they want to remain anonymous for this particular thing, you collect all that information. That doesn't go to the credit card company. They will let you have a 1-line, so many character summary, because they don't want to know all the details. And then the amounts, and then the credit card number, and the expiration date, and the security code. That's what they get, kind of. And they give you 1 field for a reference number. So that's another instance where you want to take your PHP or JavaScript and turn things into the what you need to fill out the authorized.net. But so you run a PHP script that collects this information from the form plus other information. It has your authorized.net credentials. Authorized.net will give you their encrypted long codes, and you build. Use PHP to format that information for authorized.net, and then you ship that off to authorized.net, and you get a reply that it was either approved or not approved. When it comes back approved, you then run another script because you're not legally allowed to store the credit card credentials. You sent them the credit card credentials and they're on your form, and they're going to give you back a confirmation that it cleared, hopefully. But then you don't want to store the information that your user put into the form because you can't store the credit card information. You have to be like really secure to do that. You're not going to want to do that. So you run another PHP script that strips the first 12 characters off of the credit card number and only stores the last 4 digits, and strips the expiration date and the security code. And so you either send nothing or usually you save the last 4 digits. So that would be in PHP scripts. And
Okay, so my question was, how do you reference those variables that are in the form?
let's see if I can pull it up.
Do you just reference them within squiggly brackets and then say?
I don't remember if it's squiggly brackets. I have to look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to show you. It's all retrievable, but don't remember if it's curly braces or not. But I'll take that question again. I can show you one that I did for a adoption institute. The other thing is you need to test all these emails, and often you don't want to test them. You can't test them with the final recipient, so it takes a little time to, you put in temporary email addresses and you get all 3 copies and decide what they are, and then change the actual addresses for the Human Resources Department or T-Mobile or whatever it is. So you have to check your script, and you have to allow a lot of time. Many people haven't really thought this out completely, and you're doing it for the organization the first time, and so what they might want to tell somebody, you may go through quite a few revisions creating forms. I've done a single form for $800 and then decided I didn't charge enough for that form because it led to so many questions and revisions. And it gets into, you're doing a fundraiser, you're working with somebody, but then eventually when it's all done, then the 2 other levels of people see it and decide they want it worded differently. It just have to allow for that. Let me see what else is interesting here in terms of places to put things in. I would say another interesting thing about this is RS Forms puts all of the submissions into one big RS Forms database file, not separate ones for each form. And that, you can parse that information if you need it for an application, but it's awkward. So they let you map an individual form to a database table of your choosing. So that's really useful because I don't know how many people have built components versus modules versus plugins for Joomla. But I haven't really built components. I studied building components. I built a few modules, more than a few modules, some plugins. Components, which is what you have generally in the back end to put your database in, they're the most complicated in terms of learning your actual Joomla code. A request I just got, like literally yesterday, somebody said, well, could we put in the person's cell phone number? We only have 45 people working for us. We only have 45 cell phones. We know who has which phone. Can we put their cell phone number in automatically? But that isn't currently in Joomla. The user has their full name, their email, and so I could build a table for that, but how is the person going to put that in? So I can make a form just for the HR department to put in the username and the cell phone number. And I could do that with a form, and if I do what's called a mapping in RS Forms, I can have a very simple table added to my Joomla called cell phones. And all it would have would be like an ID 1 to 47 and increment that every time a new phone is added or something. And then username. I could put them in here. I could have the person, I could do the initial migration from an Excel spreadsheet, let's say, right into my SQL. But I could use RS Forms to maintain that, because they can go look at the records that are in there in the back end, and if a cell phone gets reassigned to a new person, they can make the change. So that's without me building a custom component. If the application is simple enough, you could use RS Forms as a way to just kind of like get things into a table.
Could you, in that instance then, collect that data, use RS Forms to replace the standard Joomla registration form? And so, basically use RS Forms to collect that phone number at registration?
For a registration system?
Well, as someone becomes a Joomla user, registering on your site, username, name, password, could you then use RS Forms to add additional fields?
Yes, they give you a couple of hooks to do that.
Yep.
The other thing to point out is whenever you build a form, even a really simple contact form, if it's, this was on an intranet, so the email is they have to be logged in to fill out this form. Anytime you're creating a form that doesn't require a login first, you want to put one of those capture fields on, those anti-spam fields that are so annoying when you go to buy something and you can't quite type and the reason they're getting annoying is the purpose of those fields is to differentiate a human being from a computer. Because, think about it, if the user gets to put in their email address and like a comment, and they're going to get confirmation that they submitted that, your email server is sending out that message to the address that's filled in as being the submitter. So what if a person lies, and instead of putting in their email address, I put in your email address as the person who filled out the form? And then a comment. Well, confirmation, a copy of your comment is going to get mailed to you, right? But I'm not you. I put your email address there. That means if a computer could fill out this form, it could jam 10,000 emails in this form with a message that you do not want sent out, or maybe they're selling Viagra or whatever, okay, is in the comment, and it's coming from my email. So I'm endangered, it's called an open mail really, and you don't want to have that because you could get blacklisted as a spammer. Your domain name, not just if it's a company mailbox, the whole company's email can get their server can get, their domain can be flagged as a spammer. And so that's why you have these captures. You should not really put contact forms on your websites. Now, there is a very, very simple contact form built into Joomla itself, and now in Joomla 2.5, you can easily put a captcha on that. But when you do forms in general, that's one of the types of fields that lets you, put on the left column here, there's a captcha. So one of these is a captcha. Here it is. It's captcha anti-spam. That's what it's for. You fill that out, and you should always have that. Here's the feature. So if you click on that, I can add a caption. Any other questions? But that's kind of a tour. There are more things, but I would say the support is good. Reorganizing fields is wonderful when you're actually building the fields for the form. If you decide that that you want to reorder things, you can merely drag and drop them. So if I want the trip summary after the submit button, you can just drag the submit button up and let go, and it reorders the fields. I wish more and more Joomla components had the ability to reorder things, reordering slides with those little up arrows and down arrows. If you want to reorder your menus, it's a ridiculous thing for the year 2012. So I hope, like maybe in version 3 this afternoon, they're going to tell us all the new things, but it's really time consuming to reorder lists when you can't drag and drop. So that's a nice feature. The other thing that I find really nice about our forms is you can duplicate a field. If you customize a field like country 1, and you're adding an on-click statement to call up your JavaScript, then instead of doing that separately, you make the first country 1, and then you can hit duplicate, and you get a duplicate copy of country 1, which takes everything with it, including your on-click, and then you just change what you have to. So that's a nice thing about the interface, is it lets you duplicate fields. Backup is really important. As the form starts to get complicated with JavaScript, you can break it. So you can take the whole form at any time and make a copy of the form, I'd say as a workflow. That's a really great idea, to periodically just back up your form by making a duplicate of it, as well as backing it up off the site. Of course, it's always great to have a keep a backup and make full backups of everything periodically. I think this is about the time that was allotted, right? We're going to 12:15. So any more questions?
I have if you do a backup from an installation on a 1.5, can you restore that to an installation on a 2.5?
Yes, they have worked.
Okay.
I believe I've done that. Yeah. Now it's the same code.
Okay.
I can't speak to the fact. I know you can do it now, installing the current version of the component on both. I don't know if there was some earlier version of an RS form from before that if you export breaks. My guess is it's going to work. I think.
Have you had any issues in terms of migration up, where things broke or anything like that?
I've had issues of copying things from a staging to another, where, as I said, we only on certain types of fields. I've only discovered that on the calendar field. Also, the user email is built in into the interface, and one admin. Then I want to make an additional copy for T-Mobile, and it lets you add as many additional emails as you want. But I found that the duplicate feature, when you duplicate the form, didn't duplicate it's a bug. I haven't looked at the literature or had time to, talk to them about it, email them on the forum. But it looks like the additional emails don't get copied. So that's an issue. So you have to remake that one manually when you come off your staging to another. So it's not, but, those are the only bugs I found so far. Any other questions? Then I want to